Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the TruXedo Sentry tonneau cover here on our 2020 Jeep Gladiator. So this is what our cover is going to look like installed. Now on first glance, what you're going to notice is it has a pretty low profile design, meaning it doesn't really stick up much above the bed rails there. Therefore, we're not going to be taking away from the overall look of our vehicle. So the Sentry is a pretty unique tonneau cover. It's actually going to be a hybrid cover, meaning that it has both properties of a soft cover with the vinyl top, as well as the hard cover, because we have the aluminum slats underneath. So the benefits of a hybrid cover, number one, we're going to get the aesthetics of a soft tonneau cover here, meaning we have this nice vinyl top to look at. It's going to blend in well with our vehicle. And number two is going to be ease of use. So soft tonneau covers are definitely easier to roll up, get in the truck bed as opposed to a hard tonneau cover. A lot of these are the folding type. You have to deal with these pretty big panels that can sometimes weigh quite a bit. We're going to be folding those, stacking them onto one another, and then tilting them up towards the cab. We're not going to have that issue here because it's actually going to roll just like a soft tonneau cover. Another thing that's nice, so a lot of soft tonneau covers when we're rolling them, we kind of got to jump back and forth to each side because they don't necessarily roll up evenly. Due to the aluminum panels underneath, everything is going to roll up into one nice, tight, and compact roll. So you may be wondering why you wouldn't just go with a soft tonneau cover. We know they're easier to use, they're easier to manipulate, and they sometimes look a little bit nicer. But the one drawback of a soft tonneau cover is a lot of them, they don't really offer any security. You may, granted, need to get into the tailgate to be able to access the contents inside. In theory, that is. If a thief really wanted to get inside your truck bed here and all you had was just a standard soft tonneau cover, they could easily come up with a knife, rip right through that vinyl, and get what they needed out. But because we have the aluminum panels underneath our cover here, we're not going to have that issue. So in summary, we get all the convenience of a soft tonneau cover with the security of a hard tonneau cover. So one last advantage we have being the hybrid construction. So we touched on it briefly. So our hard covers, most likely a folding cover, we have to fold the panels back. And when we need to install or we need to store or carry larger items in our bed, let's say we need to throw a refrigerator back there or a couch, we can't have our tonneau cover installed, but we may not want to completely remove it each time. Let's face it, that's kind of a hassle. We're really not going to have that issue here with our hybrid cover because not only can it be stored against the cab, we're not going to be restricting any of our visibility. So when we have our larger items in the truck bed and we need to roll up the tonneau cover, again, we don't have to remove it completely. We can store it in this position here. Now with hard fold tonneau covers, more than likely you're going to be resting them against the back of the cab, blocking any third brake lights if they're present. You're also completely restricting your visibility. As you can see here, we're only sitting up a couple inches from the bed rails, so it does take up a little bit of our visibility, but not much at all. In fact, I can see through the window now, and we're pretty much level with our seats here, so we're really not losing any visibility at all. So another nice feature of our cover here, again, the best of both worlds with a soft cover and a hard cover, is that when we're unloading our truck, we need to get things out of the tailgate. We can actually use the top of our cover to support some of those items because it can bear weight, up to 400 pounds evenly distributed. So let's take our cooler out of here, throw it up on the cover there, say we got some duffel bags, just need to get things out of our way. Maybe we put something in the truck bed a little bit further back that we need to get to. We can easily throw everything on top of the cover. We don't have to worry about any damage, and we can get what we need out of the truck bed. So let's talk about security. We mentioned because of the dual construction, vinyl and aluminum, you're not going to be able to just cut right through the vinyl like you would for a normal soft cover. So we're going to be covered there. We're also covered in that someone being able to actually open up the tonneau cover when they're outside the truck. That's obviously not going to be a great feature if we're worried about security. You actually cannot open the tonneau cover here unless we have access inside the truck bed. Now, the great thing about most newer trucks is they actually have locking tailgates. So if you do have a locking tailgate, you're not going to be able to open the cover and get in the truck bed. If you don't have a locking tailgate, we do sell a lot of aftermarket locking tailgates for most common trucks on the market. So as you can see with our tailgate unlocked, we can actually get in. And the release handles, we're going to have one on either side. It's just going to be this nice little easy to use pull cord. So here's what our pull cord looks like. We'll simply just pull this down, not much force at all. We should hear the locks release, and then we can begin to roll it up. I'd also like to point out, we can open the cover from either side. The driver, the passenger side, we have this pull cord on each, so we can get into our truck bed from either side. So the Sentry is made right here in the USA, so we know we're getting a quality product. It also comes with a 3-year warranty, so we're going to be covered from any manufacturer's defects. I will say, after handling this cover, working with it a little bit, I really like it. That aluminum underbody, it really adds a whole nother dimension to a tonneau cover. It makes it that much more durable. It's really going to increase its longevity. You can see now, we can really beat on this thing. We're really not going to have any issues. It should hold up for time to come. So let's talk about maybe a more controversial topic, more of a general adding a tonneau cover to your truck. So there's been tons of studies, tons of research. A lot of people are either one way or the other on it as to whether or not a tonneau cover is actually going to improve your fuel economy. The theory behind this is the wind coming off the cab of the truck, coming down, it's not going to go swooping into the bed, hit our tailgate, creating more drag. Because we have the cover installed, we're going to be completely bypassing sort of the wind turbine in the bed here. It's going to float right off the top of the cover here, making our truck more aerodynamic. And what do we know about aerodynamics? The less drag we have, the greater fuel economy we're going to have. So although not major, we are definitely going to see some improvements to our fuel economy by adding a tonneau cover. So in regards to installation, this one's pretty simple. We don't need to make any modifications to the vehicle whatsoever. We're going to have a few brackets, one for the front, one for the rear. It's going to use some existing holes and existing weld nuts in the truck bed here. So again, no modifications whatsoever. Definitely something you guys can do at home by yourselves without any special tools required. So if we have some delicate cargo here in our truck bed, things we're really trying to keep dry and away from the elements, we shouldn't have any concerns at all because we're actually going to have built-in weather stripping on both of our rails as well as the header. So there really should be minimal water getting in this thing. The weather seals, they form a nice tight fit between the top of the bed and the bottom of the rails. So there's very minimal chance that we're going to get water, debris in our truck bed, keeping our items safe. So that's what the manufacturer has to say about the weather stripping and weather sealing here of this tonneau cover. Why don't we go ahead and test it out for you guys? I think the best way to do this would be to take a big bucket of water, throw it on this cover, and see if we get any water on the underside. So now that we got her wet, let's go ahead, take a look inside, see how we did. So now we're looking inside our truck bed here. We did get a few small drops over there on the right side, but for the most part it's pretty dry. I will, however, say that these covers take a little bit of time to settle, to truly flatten. They've been rolled up in the box for so long. I'm sure once it does settle out and really conforms to the top of the truck bed, it should get rid of all potential leaks. So now we have a couple accessories here we'd like to go over with you real quick. Something you may be interested in purchasing with your cover. We do sell these here at eTrailer. Number one, we have a light. So if your truck doesn't have any bed lights, you may consider adding this. It's just a nice little bright LED light strip we can put underneath the cover here to help light things up when we're getting items in and out at night. I would like to point out it's actually battery powered. Therefore, we don't have to worry about running any power wires. The next thing you may be interested in is we have a little luggage hook. Some of us may be getting up there in age. We don't necessarily want to crawl into our truck bed here. We may not want to deal with opening the cover. That's pretty much what this luggage hook is designed for. We have a nice little durable handle here with a hook on the end. It's pretty long too. I can reach the back of our truck bed no problem. We can use it to help pull things closer to us so we can get out of the bed. And then finally, we have a little organizer here. So this is going to be specific for the Truxedo Tonneau covers. It's going to install in the rails here. And it's going to give us a little bit more storage here. We can put some smaller, more delicate items in there so we don't have to worry about them shifting around in our bed. So now that we've gone over some of the features of this cover, let's go ahead and show you guys how to put it on. So the first step of our installation, if we have anything in our truck bed, we'd want to go ahead and clean all that out now to give us more room to work. And then we can start with the actual cleaning, which is going to be the first step of our installation. So you can take a soapy water solution. It really doesn't matter what sort of cleaner you use. We're just going to be using some wet wipes and a paper towel. But we want to clean all the surfaces that our tonneau cover is going to come in contact with. So we're going to clean both the tops of the beds here, the bed sides, and then we're also going to clean the bulkhead here. So I'm just going to take a wet wipe here, just wipe this down, get any dirt and debris off there that could potentially cause any sealing issues with our cover. So now that we have everything cleaned off, I'm going to go ahead and install the bulkhead seal. It looks like this, that comes in our kit. So now we'll go ahead and peel the sticker off the back side of the bulkhead seal here, which is going to reveal our adhesive. So we only want to peel a little bit back at a time because we don't want to get any contaminants on there. We're going to do our best we can to try to align that. Because again, basically we just want this little raised lip here to be flush with the inside of our bed. So we're just going to work a little bit at a time, work our way all the way over to the other side. I will also make a note that if it's cold outside, the adhesive may not stick as well. If you have like a hair dryer, for example, and you are installing this outside in the cold, it may be a good idea to just go ahead and try to heat up this metal as best you can. It's not necessarily required, but it is going to help ensure our adhesive sticks a little better. So chances are you're going to have a little bit extra once you get to the other side of the truck bed. Just going to simply take a pair of scissors and cut the excess off. So as you can see there, we made 2 cuts because we want to make sure that we don't cut it too short. So just take a little bit off at a time there and then test it out. So now that we have our bulkhead seal installed, we're going to go ahead and install our foam block. So these are going to be installed in each of the corners here, just like so. So again, we want to make sure that we clean the surface off, wipe it down so we get a good seal here with our foam block. So same thing as the bulkhead seal, we're going to have a little adhesive backing on the back, peel the tape off, and then we're going to shove it up in the corner and then flush up against the bulkhead. And then we're actually just going to sort of fold it down there. There's going to be a little curvature on the bed here. So it's not going to be perfect, but essentially this is what it's going to look like. So now we're just coming over here to the other side. We'll be installing a block seal there as well. So directly below the foam blocks that we just installed, you're going to see we have 2 holes here. So what we're going to be paying attention to is this top hole here, because we need to identify whether we have the old bulkhead or the new bulkhead. So the old bulkhead is going to have 2 oval holes, one on the bottom, one on the top. The new bulkhead is going to have the octagonal hole here on the top. So as you can see there, we do have that octagonal hole, so we know we have the new bulkhead. We need to make sure we identify that before these next few steps here, because the installation will be specific to whether we have the old bulkhead or the new bulkhead. We have the new bulkhead, as we said, so those are the next steps we're going to show you. The instructions should go over pretty well the old bulkhead installation as well. So now we're going to take our front bracket. Now the front brackets are a little bit different for each side, so you want to make sure you have the correct one. But essentially, if we just went ahead and mocked it up, you can see we have our 2 oblong holes here. Those are going to roughly line up with the 2 holes we identified a little earlier. And then we want this top part here, the flange, to be sort of flush with the top of the bed rails. So in theory, here's about what our bracket should look like when we have it installed here. And this way we can confirm that we have the correct bracket for that side. But once we've identified that, we're going to make sure we get the correct hardware. We're going to have a couple different bags of hardware. We talked about earlier the old bulkhead versus the new bulkhead. We want to make sure that we have the hardware bag for the new bulkhead. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little nut here. And we're actually going to be installing that into that top octagonal hole, like so. Now what we can do is we can take our 1/4 inch bolt, along with this little handy tool we have in our kit here. So we're going to have some printing on the front side of this tool letting us know that's the side we need to insert the bolt through. So we'll insert it through there like so. And then we'll go ahead and just thread that into our nut. So the handle, what this is for is, it stops that nut from turning so we can thread our bolt in. Because as we thread in our bolt there, it's going to expand those little metal prongs in the back, pulling it tight against the inside of the bed. So now I'm going to put some firm pressure here on this handle to hopefully hold the nut in place. And I'm going to take a 12mm socket and we're going to tighten down that bolt. So we didn't quite get it that time, but basically what we're looking for is once that nut will no longer move in there, we know we did this correctly. It is a little bit tricky here with this handle tool because it doesn't always grab onto the nut very well and it spins this, so we're not really working towards the end result. So it may take a couple tries, but we're just really going to get the correct pressure and the correct angle here of this handle in order to get it to hold the nut successfully. So yeah, now if we give a wiggle on that nut there, we can see it's definitely secured in place properly. So it does take a little bit of patience because this handle really doesn't grab on too well to the nut. So it just takes a little bit of adjusting and some patience, and then you should be able to get the nut secured there, which we'll be able to verify by just giving a tug on it to see that it's not moving. So now we can go ahead and loosely install our bracket. We're going to take our 1/4" bolt, the 1/4" flat washer, that's going to be going through the top hole. And on the bottom hole here, we're going to have one of our button head screws. We're going to have our oversized washer. We'll place that through there. This will go into the bottom hole in the bracket. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take another one of our 1/4" flat washers, place that over the back side of our button head screw, and then we're going to take our weld nut here, these little rubber nuts. We're going to make sure the side with the flange is facing the bracket. We're going to go ahead and thread that on. We're not going to thread it down all the way, just get a couple threads started here. Because then we can go ahead and install it here into the bulkhead. So now we're going to take a 12mm socket and an 1/8" Allen key. We're going to alternate tightening these down. We're just going to be snugging them up. You definitely don't want to torque them or put too much pressure on them, but we just want to keep them in place here to hold our bracket a little bit steadier. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to be installing our rear brackets. So we need to first identify whether or not we have the trail rail here on our Gladiator. Now it's pretty distinguishable. It's basically going to be a channel/track system that installs here underneath the bed sides. You can pretty clearly see we don't have that in place. So the reason we need to identify that is because these next couple steps are going to be specific to models with the trail rail or models without. We'll be using the instructions that show without the trail rail, but again, you can follow the instructions along if you do have the trail rail equipped. So now that we've identified whether or not we have the trail rail, well, since we're doing our installation for models without the trail rail, we're going to be looking for a threaded hole here directly behind the tailgate, sort of above where this light would be. And then we're going to be grabbing the driver's side, since we're working on the driver's side bracket. They are labeled D and P for driver and passenger side. So this is one of two brackets we're going to be installing. It's going to be inserted like that. We're going to be using one of our button head screws here. But what you want to do is you want to take your screw now and you want to try to thread it through that hole there. So for our particular truck here, we have a little bit of paint inside that hole that's stopping me from threading that bolt in correctly. And we really don't want to cross thread it. We can only really get a couple started, and we could potentially damage the threads. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a thread tap that we have here at the shop. We're going to be using this to clean out all the paint from that weld nut. So you may or may not need to do this step depending on how your bolt threads in, but it's certainly not a bad idea. You just need to be very careful when you're doing this. That way it goes in straight, because you could actually damage the threads more, cross thread them, and then you'd be in some real trouble. Just kind of eye that to make sure it's in there straight. And you should know right away within the first couple turns whether you have it installed correctly. You should get a little bit of resistance, but not much. So yeah, that feels pretty good. Basically, we're just cleaning out all the paint inside those threads there. So if you do end up needing a thread tap, you can probably pick these up from most local auto parts stores or home improvement stores. It's not really a specific product. It's pretty general. It's just going to be an M6 thread tap. Once we get that tap out of there, if you take a look in the little grooves there, you can actually see all the paint that we got out. So once we have our threaded hole cleaned out, we're going to go ahead and take our Allen screw along with a 4mm Allen key. Going to place it into position, and then we're going to begin threading it in. So we're not going to be tightening it super tight now, just snugging it up. So now that we have this bracket in place, we're going to take our upper bracket. These are going to be the same for the driver and passenger side. Now there is going to be a top and bottom to it though. One of these oblong holes is going to be a little bit bigger than the other. You can see this one, our screw doesn't pass through, so we know that's going to go on top. This bottom one here is a little bit larger. Our screw does pass through there, so we know that's the one that's going to line up with our hole here. So we're going to take our hex bolt, our flat washer, place that through there like so. Then we're going to stick that into the hole there. And then on the back, it's going to be threading into our little block here. So it's kind of hard to do this with one hand, but just try to line everything up and then begin to thread in your bolt. Get our plate into position. And again, we're not tightening this down super tight, just going to snug it up to hold everything in place. So now we're ready to install our side rails. Now these are side specific. We're going to be working on the driver's side first. We want to make sure the side with our strap here is at the top and our Velcro is on the outside. But so long as we verify both of those things, we should know we have the correct rail for that side. And then we're just going to simply line up our holes here. So you can see we have a pre-drilled hole in the top of our side bracket. We're going to adjust that to line it up with the oblong slots here. Place one of our Allen head cap screws through there. Place a flat washer on the bottom and then a lock nut. And I will just repeat that same process on the front bracket as well. So then when we have that front bracket attached, we'll simply just repeat the same process on the other side of the vehicle. So now that we have our rails in place, we can go ahead and tighten them down to the brackets. We're going to need a T27 Torx bit and a 7/16 inch wrench to do this. Now before we get in there and tighten them down, we want to make sure that we're putting downward pressure on the rail and then we're pulling out towards the bedside. So there'll be a little channel sort of in the bottom of the rail there that'll sort of line up with the grooves in the bed. And then again, we're just going to press down and then pull out here. We'll just repeat that same process on the other side. So next, we're going to tighten up our front bracket here. We're going to use a 7/16 inch socket for the top bolt and then an 1/8 inch Allen key here for the bottom one. We want to make sure that we're putting downward pressure on the rail here while we tighten these down. You also want to make sure that you don't over tighten them and damage the fasteners. And now we're going to jump over to the other side here and repeat that same process. Now finally, we're going to have two more bolts to tighten. We have the rear bolt here for each side of our rear bracket. We use a 1/2 inch socket to tighten this down. And again, we want to make sure we're putting downward pressure and pulling out on our rail. So now we're going to get our tire cover roll, set it on the truck bed here. Now we do need to make sure that we have the correct side of the roll. You can see these little black plastic handles or clickers, I think is what they call them. So we need to make sure that these are going to be, when we roll the cover out, they're going to be up towards the cab. What we're going to pay attention to is, this is going to line up with an oblong hole we have over here on our rail. Now we're going to roll out the cover here and try to line everything up. And now that we have the cover lined up, we're going to go underneath. Probably going to need to lay in your truck bed here and look up, because we're going to slide over those little black plastic handles, because that's actually what locks the cover in place. So once you verify that the Allen bolt is indeed in that slot here, you're going to take the handle and we're just going to push it out towards the bed. Just like that. As you can see, it's locked in place. We'll go ahead and do that same thing on the other side. And now we'll simply just unroll the rest of the cover. So once we get to the end here, you want to go a little bit slower, because you're going to make sure everything lines up. And then what we're going to do is we're actually just going to hit the top of the cover. We should hear an audible click, and then we can check to make sure it's locked in place. Just go over here to the other side. Now we can shut our tailgate, because we're done. And that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Truxedo Sentry tonneau cover here on our 2020 Jeep Gladiator.